If you own or manage an e-commerce business and you're struggling to hit your target ROAS, you're probably making 3 mistakes. First, you're spending the same amount of money every single day, regardless of your conversion rate and when your customers actually most likely to buy from you. Second, your ad account is way too complex or it's way too simple. You may be running things just like Advantage Plus and Performance Max, or you have dozens of campaigns that you can't even tell the difference between. And finally, you're not running cost caps. All your accounts are set on highest volume or maximize conversion. In the market right now, there's 3 main problems. The first problem we see is that advertising costs are nearly 3 times higher than they were just 4 years ago. Usually the doubling of advertising costs takes about 7 years, and we saw this happen in just 4 years twice over. Every single day, there's over 3,500 new e-commerce businesses started that are making your advertising costs higher and higher. We've also seen the introduction of other platforms like TikTok that are not converting as well as historic best performing platforms like Meta and Google. The second problem we've seen is tracking has declined tremendously in the last few years. In the introduction of iOS 14.5, we lost nearly all of our tracking capabilities across both Facebook and Google Ads. Then on top of that, we saw a huge change from Google Analytics to GA4, nearly wiping out all of the best reporting that we've ever had historically in e-commerce. This year, we've seen Google push cookieless data more and more and more, making your tracking even harder. And as a result, we've seen a huge rise in third-party attribution platforms. So if you sum this all up, the 2020 best practice is completely dead. Everything that you used to know about running ads on Meta and Google is no longer the same. There's been major shifts, major changes, and ultimately the things that you know the best, like lookalike audiences, pixel matching, custom audiences, ABO bidding strategies, and even dynamic creative optimization are completely gone. If you're using any of these strategies today, you're likely falling way behind all of your competitors who are caught up to the best practices, leaning into certain practices, but also keeping the control that they need ultimately to scale their business and improve their return on ad spend. The third problem that we see right now is most advertisers have completely given up control of their ad accounts. We're seeing things like ultra broad audiences and Advantage Plus being the most popular bidding strategies on Meta. We're also seeing 100% broad keywords where Google is allowed to use your keyword and expand it as far as they want, giving you no control over who you exactly want to target and what you exactly want to target. And one of the biggest mistakes we're seeing right now is brands are spending the same amount of money every single day. They're not making any time of day adjustments, no day of week adjustments. Basically, we're advertising all of our products to all people in all locations all the time, essentially giving up all of our advertising control to both Facebook and Google. Now, when you think about this from Meta or Google's perspective, their goal is to make sure every single person that logs onto their app can be served as many ads as possible. So by you going broad, by having broad keywords being enabled, by running things like Performance Max and Advantage Plus, you're essentially letting Google and Facebook overinflate how many people are actually able to receive advertisements. If you look up how much Meta and Google have grown, Meta has grown 158% in the past 5 years since they've implemented these changes. And even more, Google has grown 232% in the last 5 years since they pushed to these more broad audiences and broad targeting. Bottom line, broad audiences and broad keywords are a great tactic for Facebook and Google, but not the best tactic for you to spend your money and maximize your returns. So here's how we solve this. We call this the M3 method. There are 3 major optimizations that we use across every single ad account for all of our clients that overcome the 3 major market problems that we're seeing today. Ultimately, this method regains your control of your ad accounts without hurting the algorithm. It is entirely focused on spending your money when it's most likely to maximize your return. And on average, ad accounts that implement this method see a 43% increase in the first 90 days on either their return on ad spend or their profit. In one account, we drove $362,000 in revenue from Google and Facebook, which is a literal 100% increase versus last year. In another account, we scaled advertising 222% in 60 days and increased the return on ad spend by 43% in just 60 days. In another account, we had $2 million in revenue from both Facebook and Google ads, which is 95% growth versus last year. In another account, we tripled revenue year over year from $70,000 to $210,000, primarily using Google ads. And just 3 more quick examples. In one, we increased contribution margin by 76% in 66 days. Another example, we increased contribution margin by 236% in 59 days versus the previous period. And then finally, we increased ROAS by 48% in a Facebook ads account in just 59 days. And these are just a handful of picked results from 2024 only. The first thing we do with every single ad account that we manage is look at time of day and day of week adjustments. So basically what we do is we take a very complex data set, we push it into our template, which actually automatically shows day of week performance over the last 90 days. And we can expand this out to any time range we want for any account we want, because we've built all of these custom templates to specifically show showcase exactly when we want to spend a brand's money, and more importantly, when we want to save money by pulling back. So this is just looking at a short period here where we have each day of the week clearly broken out, and you can see here the spend associated to each day, which in this case is literally almost all identical. It looks like they spent about $3,000 every single day of the week according to this report. But what you can see very, very clearly here is on Sundays, on Tuesdays, and on Fridays, their return on ad spend is about 40% higher than Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday. So what we've clearly seen here is that if we were to spend more money on Sundays, Tuesdays, and Fridays, we would get an outsized return compared to spending on the other days. Now, this is a bit of a choppy trend. What we normally see here is weekends versus weekdays work better. So some brands may see better weekends versus better weekdays. There's a whole lot of ways that this can parse out. The second thing that we like to look at, which is very aligned with our time of day and day of week adjustments, are the same core demographic adjustments. So this can be age and gender. For age, we really like to look at where is the split? Where does the ROAS drop off the most? Usually this happens at an age ceiling or an age floor. So an age ceiling would be something like we never advertise to anyone older than 50. Age floor would be we never advertise to someone younger than, say, 25. So what we have here is a clear breakdown. And look at this huge optimization that we can make right here. If you look at the column for 18 to 24, we see that 18 to 24 has spent 50% of the total spend in this account at a 1.82 return on ad spend. So the 18 to 24 bucket has spent $10,500, where everything else in total has only spent another $11,000. So we have nearly 50% of the entire ad account spending on the 18 to 24 age group at a 1.82 return on ad spend, where the rest of the account has a return on ad spend of 2.89 on average. So just imagine, simply put, if you did nothing else, you just took that $10,000 spent, you eliminated 18 to 24, and you spent it from 25 to 64. Doing that alone, this account is going to significantly improve their return on ad spend, lower their cost per acquisition, and then be able to recycle that return, because they have such a higher ROAS now, into ads and scale rapidly. The last piece that we'd like to look at here is gender. So we can see very clearly that this account is spent dominantly in the female category. 21,000 of the 22 has actually been spent on females. That's fine in some cases, but what we see here is that males return at a 4.56 return on ad spend, where females return at a 2.26. So just imagine if we've at least shifted 5 or 10% of that budget from female to male as a good test to understand if we can maintain that elevated return on ad spend versus the female demographic that returns only at a 2.26. So these are the tests that every brand that we work with needs to run in the first few weeks. We need to understand where the money needs to be spent, when the money needs to be spent, and finally, to whom that money needs to be targeted. We need to align perfectly on age, gender, day of week, time of day, because those are essentially the core principles of advertising. Actually targeting the right person at the right time in the right place is the key to actually driving an increased return compared to where you are right now, where you're possibly wasting a huge portion of your advertising spend because you're just allowing Meta or just allowing Google to spend it how they would like to freely. For the second key optimization that we need to make with every single ad account, honestly, it's better if I actually just show you, because your ad account probably looks something like this, where it's overly simple, maybe 1 or 2 campaigns in total, maybe 1 ad set, really no targeting, and just a bunch of ads thrown in there. Or it looks something like this, dozens of campaigns, some that are active, some that are inactive, pausing your best ads, pausing what you think are your worst ads, but you're really not sure, hundreds of ad sets, hundreds of ads, such a broken out environment that you don't even know what's actually working. So what you need to create is a scalable system that's both easy to manage, feeds the algorithm, but also allows you to retain all of the control you need to scale and maximize your returns over time. So this structure has 3 main pillars. The very first pillar, and the most common thing that you're gonna see here, is the Advantage Plus shopping campaign. So that ASC campaign is our scale campaign. That's where all our best creatives are gonna go. Everything is going to be graduated into that campaign. So let's hold that for just a moment now. The core of this whole account is our prospecting CBO campaign. Our prospecting CBO campaign is meant to target net new customers for the business, and is allowing Facebook to take control over where to push our spend, because it creates a system that actually makes every single ad creative fight its way to the top. Basically, what's going to happen here is every time we have a new round of creatives, so whether they're images, videos, whether there's 2 creatives, whether there's 20 creatives, those always go into a brand new pack. A pack is a brand new ad set. Essentially, you want to create a 100% broad ad set with new creatives every single time. It's going to completely eliminate any relearning of previous ads that have worked so hard to climb their way to the top. And Facebook is actually going to distribute your spend properly based on metrics that you could never act on. So as you launch new creatives and you allow those creatives to run freely, Facebook's going to allocate your spend to the best creatives. This is well known as a CBO campaign. The trick here comes in the graduation of your best creatives into your Advantage Plus. So what we like to do is we take every 2 weeks the top 10% of ads and we literally move them into the ASC campaign as we're doing here. Only your top 10% gets moved. What this will create steadily over time is a system that promotes the top 10%, where 80% of your account is actually going to be pushed into this scale campaign. I know I said before earlier in this video that we're trying to get away from losing control. The thing is here, the Advantage Plus campaign, when given the exact right assets, is going to work better than any other campaign in your account. Ultimately, we are guaranteeing that this campaign will work because it's only receiving strong creatives. You're going to ask, what creatives? How do I decide the creatives that actually go in there? It's actually pretty simple. All you're going to do is sort your entire ad account by spend, look at which of those have driven the highest return on ad spend, and then graduate those into the Advantage Plus campaign. You do not want to overcomplicate this. You need to create a structured system that basically has rules so even anyone is able to manage this. The second thing you're going to do with those graduates, with those best creatives, is you're going to actually move those down into a new ad set that is a single interest or a lookalike ad set with just your top 10% of winners. The reason we do this in the existing CBO campaign is because that interest now needs to fight against everything. So we're creating an ultra competitive environment within your ad account, but we're still focused on scaling the best. So it's almost like a tier system. So if you take all of your tier 1 creatives and you put them into one bucket, they're allowed to fight with the ad spend that you're giving in. And then you take everything else that's tier 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you're pushing those all into that final bucket. And you're saying, if you're better than tier 2, if you're better than tier 3, if you're better than tier 4, fantastic. You're going to get more spend. You're going to get more spend because Facebook's algorithm is going to distribute your spend to where you're going to get the highest return. And furthermore, you're not going to waste thousands of dollars on testing campaigns and ABO structures that requires manual oversight, which honestly is going to get missed by any human being. The last piece to this structure, and this is specifically for brands that have dozens and dozens of purchases in the past. This is a retention campaign. This is going to be how you engage your existing customers to milk more cash out of those customers steadily without annoying them. That retention campaign is going to be set fairly simple. Normally, we're going to have 3 basic ad sets. We're going to have a purchaser's 180 days that excludes anyone who's purchased more than 2 times. So this is just going to be one-time purchasers over the last 180 days. The second ad set is going to be anyone who's ever purchased 2 times or more. This is going to be people who are most likely coming back over and over again, and we need to show them new products. We need to showcase new features to them. This is a fantastic ad set to have. That's going to be a huge winner for you, massive returns. And the final ad set is going to be purchasers all time who have not purchased in the last 180 days and who have never made more than 1 purchase. So they've only made 1 purchase over 180 days ago. In most cases, Facebook's going to completely ignore these people, but they've done something with you and they've transacted cash to you. They cannot be ignored. They still need to be targeted. This setup's actually really easy. Anytime you have new winners, you push them into the retention campaign. And then the final, all campaigns and all ad sets exclude 14-day purchasers. This is very simply because Facebook's going to waste 5 to 10% of your ad spend on people who just purchased, because in Facebook's eyes, they're most likely to purchase again. But if you look at your retention data, I nearly guarantee that no one purchases within the next 7 to 14 days after they just made a purchase with you, because most likely they haven't even received their package yet. This structure seems easy on the outside. And if you implement this entire structure and you let it run for months and months, and you've graduated your creative and you're sticking to this structure, you're sticking to the rules that we've just discussed, then our third and final optimization comes into play. And this is the complete takeover. This is when we scale accounts more than ever and we keep accounts as efficient as possible. What I mean by efficiency is either your lowest cost per acquisition or your highest return on ad spend. And specifically, we want that return on ad spend or cost per acquisition to be as aligned to your goal as physically possible. So this is when we introduce the cost cap. Now, before I even explain what a cost cap is, I think it's really important to understand what you're actually probably doing right now. Right now in your ad account, you're running something called highest volume. And I want to read the definition literally as it appears in your ad account today. Meta will aim to spend your entire budget and get the most purchases using the highest volume bid strategy. The second line to this, which is equally important, if keeping your average cost per result, also known as your cost per acquisition, around a certain amount is important, enter a cost per result goal. Facebook is literally telling you what to do, and 99% of advertisers are completely ignoring this. In fact, 99% of advertisers are not using cost caps, but over 50% of the entire budget spent on meta ads is actually in a cost cap environment. So all the big brands that you're modeling your advertising after are using cost caps. In simple terms, a cost cap is essentially a target that you give Meta or Google that you need to hit. So basically what happens is in a highest cost environment, you give Meta your spend, you give Google your spend. that spend is spent in full every single day. In a cost cap environment, which is what we always recommend after you implement the entire system that we just walked through, in that cost cap environment, you actually see Meta pulling back your spend on certain times of the day, certain days of the week, to certain cohorts, such as gender or location. And then what this creates for you is your money is actually spent when it's most likely to convert, and it's saved when it's least likely to convert. So if you have a situation where your conversion rate is higher on one specific day, great. Meta is going to overspend your budget. It's going to spend more of your money because it's going to get you the return that you're looking for. And on an average over 30 days, Meta and Google are going to do whatever they possibly can to actually hit the target that you give it, which is one of the biggest advertising issues that we see right now, especially in e-commerce. We see people missing targets and having no idea how they're actually going to work down to hit the target that they want. And just so you understand the power of these cost caps, the average brand that implements them properly sees an additional 31% increase in return on ad spend. That's additional to step 1 and step 2, a 31% additional increase by implementing these cost caps properly. Now, super important here, there is so much that needs to be done for cost caps. This is not a set and forget environment. If you set your cost caps wrong, if you set your cost caps too early, if you don't have the right system to set these cost caps in, then you are going to completely fail here. Your ad account's going to slowly die. You're never going to be able to scale. Honestly, you might even miss your cost caps because the learnings aren't set up properly. I really want to make sure everyone understands that your cost caps change drastically based on your average order value, your conversion rate, your website, changes you've made to your ads, products that you're actually advertising. It's all across the board, and your cost caps need to be managed very closely. So instead of the strategy sounding like a set and forget strategy, it is much more complex. It requires much more oversight, and that's why only the biggest brands are able to do this successfully. Now, if you've tried cost caps in the past, you may have seen a few things that didn't go your way. You may have seen campaigns completely stop spending. You may have seen 1 or 2 ad sets get all of the spend, or even furthermore, get 1 or 2 creatives that have all of the spend. The worst case scenario here is that you set a cost cap and they're not followed, and that you get worse results than you would in a highest volume setup. And this is why it's so critical to properly implement step 1 and step 2 to have a system structure and rules in place that actually allow the cost caps to work. Because if you just set these and try to forget about it, try to just get your cost per acquisition to exactly where you want it to be and hope that it's super easy, and to be honest with you, all your competitors are going to outflank you in some way, shape, or form. It's critically important to have a structure in place that actually feeds the algorithm, that actually feeds into these cost caps, so that you can spend money when it's most likely to make money back for you. So you can maximize your return on ad spend and ultimately scale at your exact business target. So just to recap, the very first thing we do is our time of day and day of week adjustments. These adjustments are super predictable. On average, we see these adjustments alone increase return on ad spend by around 25%. The reason that we always start with these adjustments is because they are ultra predictable. We are eliminating and reallocating our budget to the best ages, the best day of the week, the best platforms, the best placements. Ultimately, you're spending your money where it is going to drive the highest return on ad spend for you all of the time. The second thing that we like to do is implement a structure that is scalable. So we get the first win right out of the way, and the second win starts to reallocate a structure that ultimately puts you in a position to scale your best creatives steadily over time, one by one, week by week. You're going to have a system that basically allocates the majority of your spend to guaranteed winners. You are not guessing and checking here anymore. You know for certain that a specific cohort of your ads work better than all of your other ads, and everything else has to fight its way up the ladder to actually get involved with those top ads. And the last thing you need to do, and really only if you have done step 1 and step 2 here, is implement your cost caps. Your cost caps are going to be the hardest thing for you to implement, but if you do these properly and you set these up with step 1 and step 2 implemented properly, and you're patient enough, your cost caps are going to improve the efficiency across your entire ad account, and ultimately will be the lever to transform your business so you can scale steadily and never have to worry about overspending or spending on the wrong time of day or wrong day of week or wrong age, demographic. Literally, they will be the control that you are looking for in your ad account. If you don't think this could work for you, we've done this exact same strategy for young nails where we increased their profit by 131% in 12 months. We've done the same thing for Glam Squad where we increased revenue by 226% attributed to the advertising platforms. And we also did the same thing for a brand that you would never expect, Titan Casket, where we increased ROAS by 30% and we increased revenue by 65% during the same period. And the average brand that has implemented this exact process has increased their return on ad spend or their advertising profit by over 43% in just 90 days. So if you feel like this is what you're missing and you're just sick and tired of missing your ROAS targets, or you're sick of working with agencies who don't have this level of expertise, then click the button below to book a call with my team.